Welcome to the Radiantpreneur Rising Show with me, Jess Tomlinson. Interviews to inspire a new movement of leaders and entrepreneurs. The ones who lead with vulnerability and authenticity, stand in visibility, allowing themselves to truly be seen, are fierce and playful and sexy. Choose business as a spiritual practice. Seek collaboration versus competition. Know giving back is not an option. It's a necessity. They do it their way. They radiate. They rise. Now, let's rise together. All right. Welcome, everyone, back to the Radiantpreneur Rising Show. My name is Jess Tomlinson, and I'm really excited for the conversation today. I have a beautiful dynamic duo here, Tay and Val, and this is my first time connecting with them. They have an amazing story. They live in my hometown of Seattle. I was connected to them through a dear, dear friend, so I can just feel how beautiful this conversation is going to be, and I'm looking forward to all of you really taking whatever nugget of wisdom these two amazing women have to share with us. So welcome, Tay and Val. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jess, for having us. And we'll see saying this is Val.
Good to know. Perfect. Just like it is on the screen as your name showed on my side on Zoom. Perfect. Thanks. I was going to ask that, so that's good. All right, well, let's dive in. I only have one question that I always like to ask, and I'm super curious what it's going to be for both of you, since I know how visible you are and how many live trainings you do, which I just love. And that question is, how are you currently leaning into your visibility edges, really kind of playing to those edges around how you show up visibly in business or life or relationships?
Wow, love that question. I actually had a pretty set answer to that, but what's really coming up more alive for me is to show up in all facets of us.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be there are different boxes where we land. So like we have a spiritual business called Tay Val where we bring in spirituality into business. So that's like one facet, right? One box. And then there are storytellers, makers, city artists of Seattle, another box. And then we spend like 10 years traveling around the world, so that's the dreams, asking people what are their dreams. Then there's the third box. And right, and then there's the fourth box where we are like we are wise, we are people of color, we are all the boxes that we check. And it used to be like we show up whatever it is that the audience need in different ways. And I think what we are leaning into is really all of that as one whole piece. What I mean by that is the sharing stories and tools from each, like as and when appropriate, to be of highest service to the audience. I think we just practiced that over the last 2 days.
Yeah. Yeah. So over the last 2 days, we've been conducting a 2-day live training on mindfulness and emotional intelligence-based leadership to a group of people who work for Seattle colleges. And it's super cool to see how we begin, right, as seen as facilitators of modern mindfulness and meditation. And then by the end of 2 days, we have probably shared every single facet of us there is. Stories from our journey from cycling around the world, stories from us working with our clients in a spiritual practice, and then even at the very end of yesterday, stories of how we communicate to each other as human beings, as wives who live and work together. And it's just really magical, because in the past, I would have imagined that when I'm talking to you about a particular thing, I have to only show that part of me. And then really understanding that the more I'm able to fully bring myself into the room, into the space, the more I'm inviting your whole self to show up with us.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I love that this is coming up because this is actually the root of my work. This is what I do and has been my own journey, has been really giving myself permission to be my fullest self-expression, no matter where I'm showing up, and especially in the realm where we're told that business women are supposed to be a certain way, right? And maybe we have this idea that society has really impressed on us that we're supposed to show up in this particular way because that's what's going to serve most, or that's what's most comfortable or whatever. So I love that that you both are leaning more fully into this because you have such a depth of different sides of you and experiences, and so I'm curious, why now? Why is it kind of coming up in your journey, and how has that journey been, when maybe the difference between you integrating these different parts of how you show up in your leadership versus maybe when you kind of used to play just inside a specific box?
I think it all comes down to this basic human need for psychological safety, right? I think for us, we have it, we have the privilege of experiencing it on both ends, growing up in Singapore, whereby we are the majority race. 60% of Singaporeans are Chinese ethnicity. And then coming over here and then realizing that we are probably as diverse as you can get. We check the box for people of color, we check the box for women, we check the box for queer, we check the box for students, and then you realize, oh, people, when they see us, instead of seeing common humanity, we have been conditioned to see the differences. In the past, we sort of having to, when we were first starting out over here, it was really a matter of creating safety. Like, for example, when we were to go and speak to students in schools, we were very intentional about maybe, I wouldn't say hiding, but not necessarily celebrating the fact that we are two queer women, for example. And then maybe when we're in a corporate setting, right, you're not necessarily showing the part of whereby everything.
We actually froze again. So do you want to go ahead and repeat just kind of the last sentence that you were saying?
Sure. So I was saying, and then maybe when we are in, say, corporate America, then there's this intentionality of really speaking the corporate lingo so that we are not coming across as people who has too much of a cultural baggage, instead of embracing the cultural upbringing as enriching the conversation, enriching the room. And then by and by, we realize that this safety that we're seeking has to be modeled. Safety that we're seeking has to be created within ourselves. And then when we find ourselves in a leadership position, we are, in a way, industry leaders in terms of, making spirituality, modernizing it, making ancient wisdom accessible and applicable to the 21st century life. We have to be the ones to show people and include people. Because the moment I see myself as different from you, even though I feel like I am the minority, I am modeling myself seeing different from you. So how can that possibly inspire you to include me? We decide to model that for ourselves, and creating that psychological safety for ourselves also actually helps other people sort of land into that space. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, and I'm so curious, just to dive a little bit deeper into some of the specifics, because I know, the women that I work with, traditionally, most people don't check all the boxes like you ladies do. So I think you just have so much wisdom to share. So I'm curious, going a level deeper of how did you create that safety within yourself? And then what did that look like to kind of bridge that gap of what I'm hearing is connection. You're really bridging a gap of connection So what did that look like in the more tangible form, the way that you have shown up?
So tangibly, it's not as if we have some body movements that we get into, but it's really more like feeling safe within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes we walk in the wall, or at least for me, there's an unconscious sense that I am not safe.
Mm-hmm.
And this was something that our mentor pointed out to us. Like even though you show up as if you feel very safe, but there's a very unconscious part of you that feels unsafe, that you feel unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, it could show up and manifest as, oh, I worry if whatever story that I tell is going to trigger somebody, and they may not have tools and resources to work with it. So that's like a manifestation of my own unsafeness, insecurity. Or like, oh, did I say too much, and then have a vulnerability hangover after that? It's like, should I not have said that? So that's like a question again that landed on, did I not feel safe and supported in that situation, or as a whole being as I am, so that I feel like whatever it is that I'm sharing right here, right now, is anchored in a space of intention and high service. It is what needs in this space.
I think a really way of experiencing right now is us having this conversation, right? And even before you click record it, us really wanting to share and listen to your intention so that we can sort of get on the same page. We might have different ways of getting there, but understanding that we're all navigating this path to eventually be of service to our communities. And something as simple as stating what is so obvious in a room. Like, hey, I get a sense that we could all do with giving each other permission to fully arrive, right? To include everyone.
Yeah.
However that unfolds for you.
Yeah, I love that. I was just thinking the other day that really so many of these fears, yes, are very real, like, you know, the violence against queer people, LGBTQ, like that is very real, and we need to acknowledge, and you know, racism, and there's all these different layers that are very real and tangible. And then there's this layer of safety within ourselves that I think we're talking about, that we can create to take one step further in order to create that connection. And what I was just thinking about the other day is that we all just want to feel understood and heard. Like one of our biggest fears is that people won't see us and understand us, right? And so I think that's kind of what you're speaking to. Like I'm getting chills, because it's just such a human need. If we go back to even that like fear of safety and survival, right? It's like, oh my gosh, if people don't like understand me, or if I'm not included, like I'm not going to survive. I'm going to be on my own, because we're meant to be in community, and we're meant to, you know, thrive together, not in isolation and alone. So I love that this point is coming up, and I also love that you're talking about just stating the obvious. That's something that I like to do as well, and it can be so vulnerable for the leader. Right? Like I know I've done it many times, and it's like, oh, it takes everything in me, which is so interesting, right? That stating the obvious can sometimes feel so like why is that? What do you two have a sense as to why that is?
Oh, I love your questions, Jess.
I like to go deep, so I love that you both like to go deep too.
It's so funny because whether it be that in a private session, or sometimes when we do group trainings or group workshops or group programs or even group retreats, after we say it, and then people are like, that's something that was like in our faces, right? And I feel like sometimes it gets uncomfortable for us to state the obvious because one, we always want to assume best intent. We want to assume that everyone in this room are already doing the best that they can. And sometimes it could be a challenging or even inconvenient truth.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes real modeling of leadership to do that. And when I feel like it gets uncomfortable first because we are in your, I love this phrase, you're leaning into your edge. And then that space is created and everybody suddenly feels like, oh, okay, I'm good. I'm like, you've got me, right? And they're all looking at you, they're all looking at you to say, hey, I want to know that I'm in good hands. And when you're willing and able to do that, they feel like this person got me, so I can fully show up. Every part of me is going to be embraced and celebrated. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
I would love to add on to
Yeah,
I
I was
think
going to ask if you had input, Tay.
how I have seen it played out in that dynamics between, say, we are presenting something to a group of people, is we first show up to ask what is of high service to be shared here. So, like yesterday, we shared a really vulnerable story about a while back, a few years back, there was a professor where we just came to America, right? And we were wanting to speak in colleges to reach students, which was like a huge part that we are connected to. So we finally got an email to this like person who has power to make some decisions. So we wrote that email, waited for 2 weeks. This is after we already had, went around the world to do like 100 sharing sessions. And we got an email back in return that was just one line.
So he said, hey girls, we only work with presenters who present in English.
Oh my God.
And so we let it pause, like with the group. And we could really see or feel in that moment of vulnerability, we all connect in whether it is a moment of shock, whether it was a moment of pain, whether it was a moment of suffering. There was recognition of like, yeah, we all feel these things at different points in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Also, us trusting that by sharing, by being vulnerable and honest, you've got my back.
Mm-hmm.
You understand.
Yeah.
And there's like a back and forth of like, I've got your back. I'm here to share with you my wisdom and in high service what needs to come out of me. And in that exchange, you've got my back. So that's the safety like I'm talking about. And in that moment, I felt this like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. First, I just want to say, what's interesting is what's coming up for me is a memory of college. Like you're talking about that professor saying that, we only accept presenters who speak English. I'm like, whoa, I haven't thought of this memory for a very long time. I was in college in between 2002 and 2006. And I had a teacher who was Chinese. And I remember the students complaining while she was speaking, like, I can't understand her. She doesn't speak English. And like, I was horrified. I was so horrified and like also confused. I'm like, if you don't, maybe she does speak English, she is speaking English. And if you don't understand, then you can raise your hand and just say, can you please repeat that? Or I didn't quite get that. Like, it was just, it really broke my heart. Like this privilege of like assumption that, first of all, that like compassion for like, here's this amazing woman who probably has this amazing story that's like in America and speaks English and is teaching this amazing class and has so much wisdom. And yet all that these people could think of is like, I can't understand her and she doesn't speak English. It just, yeah. So thank you for sharing that vulnerable story here as well, because I think it just really presences so much growth even now, you know, and into the future that we all have to do to build these connections and compassion. Like I was reading in your bio that that's one of your big things is like a compassionate culture. I can't remember exactly what you said. So yeah, I just wanted to share that that memory was coming up for me. And I think to weave it all in, like it all has to do with leadership and community. And when people are vulnerable enough to stand up and be a leader and have themselves exposed, that it's our job to also create, like, yes, the leader does, like, I like that you were saying that back and forth. I think, Tay, you were the one saying that, like, it's like the leader creates a certain amount of safety, but then it's also creating safety within the room with the participants and trust, and right, like, so building that. So I'm curious some of the ways that you all set up like the container, right? I think you all probably know the word container. And for those of you who don't know that are listening, maybe if you practice certain container setting before your events, you could share just even what that means.
Container.
You do the energetics, I'll do the community.
So we set up an energetic container.
Yeah.
For everything that we do, every project that we dive into, every business has a container of its own. And by that, I simply mean that we set an intention.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, we before we began, we set a container by sharing our intentions, right? We intended to show up, to lead with inspiration and feminine power. So then that container becomes a container of inspiration and feminine power. Then we all get to show up in this safe container. You can almost see it like a round bubble or circle, like however big we want it to be. And then we can feel this boundary and this safety in this container, and then we just get to play in it. Yeah.
So that is sort of like behind the curtains, what we do at an energetic level, using the intention to just sort of like state, this is what we're here to do. I think it's also important when the people actually gathered in the room to share that and include the community agreements.
Yeah.
So we use slides, we pull it up, and then we say, here are what we are agreeing to. And our first community agreement is always, whenever appropriate, you are included.
Beautiful. I'm going to use that. I don't say that. I like that. Just very specific.
Yeah.
And we also like to include this thing called brave space. So like a level beyond safe space, when you feel safe, you're naturally brave. You feel want to share your opinions, feel brave to want to dive into the workshop, the activities that are being done. You feel brave to dive within yourself to explore and discover things that you might have never known.
Mm-hmm. And then another one that I really, really love is being generous. Generous with each other, giving each other grace, being generous with your wisdom. That means when you feel like there's something that is asking to be spoken, trusting that this wisdom is here to be shared, can you be generous with it? And of course, then also being generous with yourself. Can you be kind with yourself when you find yourself, having just very human thoughts like, am I doing this right? Am I the only one who thinks this way? Am I the only one who's having a hard time recognizing that common humanity, that, you can be kind to yourself. You're not the only one who's having this experience. And if you need further support, you're welcome and invited to ask for it.
Yeah, so good. So beautiful. It's funny because I feel like I live in a world where like this type of container building and energetics and, that is fairly common. And yet I know it's not the norm, and more people maybe don't even realize that this is a thing and that it makes just such a huge difference. just doing that from the very beginning. And, you know, especially if your goal is to really make a difference, I feel like we need this type of safety to be able to bring whatever is present and allow whatever needs to transform. Like that to me is like the highest level of growth and, you know, really like our evolution as human beings. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I love how you consciously do your work, right? Content setting, most of us do behind the scenes that we don't go tell somebody that I have set out a container for you. Right?
Yeah.
Set out a container for you. But it's also to me about awareness and education. So like we do tell our clients, like the moment you sign up to work with us, I'm going to set up a container of success for you based on your intentions. So in a way, I'm co-creating that container with you. So allowing them and letting them become aware of what exactly this is, and actually guiding them to feel this space that has been set up for them. And when they have a part to play in it, they actually feel like, oh, I also created this, that I can trust this thing that I have created. And then it becomes a relationship whereby they are not entirely dependent on you to do something for them that they may not know how to do energetically, but they feel like, oh, I participated in this. I can take some responsibility and some full responsibility on how I agreed to show up to this relationship.
I also think that it is a very human instinct for us to want to know where our boundaries are. So in fact, there was a research that was done with a group of children. They had the teacher bring them to a playground that had no fence whatsoever. And they noticed that when there were no fences, the children sort of like just hovered around the teacher to play, even though the playground was this huge space. And then same teacher, same student, same playground, the scientists actually built fences, like created literally a container of the playground, and the teacher brought the same students back to the playground, and then suddenly they noticed that all the children were just playing all over the entire playground.
Wow.
Visceral, basic instinctual level, we all yearn for that. You really see it. Maybe it's just maybe sometimes we have shifted into what I like to call the autopilot zone. When we set up a company, when we incorporate it, what do? We have a set of agreements. What do you think those agreements are? Your container. So we could be more and bringing it to the front of what we do, knowing that that's your cornerstone from which whatever structure you build is going to be based on. You're just gonna have a richer and a more powerful experience, I feel.
Yeah, and I think I would love to add that, you know, what I'm feeling is we're talking about the more masculine structural energy and the more feminine, you know, the inspiration that can flow through it. And I think sometimes what can happen in feminine leadership is that there's this assumption that there's safety or that there's, you know, an understanding, and they'll just dive into kind of more of the, like, you know, feminine unraveling or sharing, and it might be beneficial up to a certain point where there's, you know, oh yeah, I have the opportunity to actually share, right? I'm thinking of like women's circles because I lead women's circles. And yet what I find time and time again is that there's like these two things that people reflect to me that all the time, what they reflect to me is, oh my God, I've never been part of a circle like this. It's just so connected and deep, and it's fascinating to me because what I keep coming back to, that I think that I do that maybe not every circle does, is I lead with vulnerability, like extreme, you know, like I just bring myself to the table. Like no matter how I'm feeling that day, like I'm just there, I'm in it. And then the second thing is that I'm very clear on the container. Like I'm super, super clear of like what our group is about. And like I also help hold very like strict boundaries, and that creates safety, right? So like if somebody's oversharing and like their turn is really up, and I can feel like it's such an energetic thing, I think, this feminine leadership, right? Like I'm sure you both have your own, which I'm curious to hear about when you lead events, right? That inevitably it seems like there's one person that like talks a little bit more, and maybe like, you know, you're like, okay, like in the community I'm part of, we call it the arc, like feeling for the arc, and is the arc over? Like, and you being the highest service as the leader, because you are not just like being of the highest service to that one person, you are actually being of the highest service to the room. And what's of highest service, if you feel like that arc is over, is actually to lovingly have that person complete, and sometimes cut them off, you know, and it doesn't always feel good, like as a leader, but like, so I just wanted to share that, because I think this like, you know, masculine, feminine energy, as we're talking about feminine leadership, which, you know, I'm curious, any thoughts around that, what I just shared?
First of all, I love the art thing.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right?
It's storytellers. We love an arc.
Yeah, I want to get into you guys as storytellers too.
I think when you were sharing about the feminine flow and the masculine safety, I think what was more alive for me was really this we're feeling this call to work with men, and really modeling or bring into their awareness what masculine safety is.
Yeah.
How they can actually create that container, not just for themselves, but also for the people that influence. And it was pretty astonishing to me that the moment I bring up the word masculine, most of the men that I talk to do this. Say, what is that? I don't want any of that.
Oh, wow.
It was astonishing to just observe and watch how this word masculine sounds completely evil to them.
Yeah, and these are men themselves that we work. Who, when we bring up the word masculine or sacred masculine, what comes up for you? And you're like grinding it out, pushing myself,
Man
up,
never getting any sleep. So,
and we're like, oh. And we're like, what about safety? And they're like, no, you fend for yourself. We're like,
wow.
But in their everyday, they actually model sacred masculine. They just don't associate with the word.
Yeah.
So that to me was astonishing. And as we move into, you know, these men's circles, I think there's a way that the masculine, the sacred masculine, can show up in terms of leadership for men to be able to create that safe, you know, like truly not just for other people, like for themselves to show up in a powerful way.
Yeah. You cannot have masculine. You cannot have one without the other. Yeah. So the way you're modeling your very powerful, you know, ability to draw out the stories and inspiration from people can only happen because it's such a clear and strong and powerful masculine structural container. That's real for us when the masculine shifts into its sacred identity. It's normal to be a safe container through which the feminine creativity can flow and manifest and express. Because if you think about it, again, basic human instinctual needs, we got it right from the beginning. A government is a masculine structural entity, so are schools, right? Anything that is all masculine. And what were they supposed to do? They were supposed to create safety for learning and growth and flourishing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that you work with men. I love it. It's so important. More and more, my partner, he is really turned off by men's circles that he goes to. He actually doesn't feel like they're dropped in and like there's a safe container created, and like he's gone a few times, and I know one of his big visions is creating a men's movement where he can really build it with these pieces that we're talking about, to create that safety for men as well. And the merging of men and women, and like creating these communities and learning how to be in community with each other, and really just all different types of people, right? Is so important as well. I know, like, I can get so isolated in just my women's groups, and yet I know that's where I'm called to lead for now, right? But there's this nudging of me like, but like, there's a next level of work as well in building those communities, and we can't leave men behind is really what I'm feeling like in my heart. It's like, yeah, we have conversations, my partner Ben and I, about like how men just feel like they don't know where they fit in, or like what their role is, or how to show up, and it's a big healing. Yeah.
I think for me, my own life experiences has always been, I always feel safer with men. Always feel like a woman.
Wow. That's amazing. Tell us more about that, because I have not, like, I've definitely always been like, and I know that a lot of women have that experience of like the sister wound, right?
Oh, is that what
Is there a term for it now?
Oh, you've never heard of that? Yeah, there's a term called the sister or sisterhood wound, and it's something that I talk about in my women's circles, because many women have never felt safe with other women because they've been, hurt. And it's that primal, what I think back to is like when we had the shift from more of a matriarchal collaborative society to like a marriage and like one partner, then it all of a sudden became competition with other women. Competition around looks, competition around like who could be, the best or whatever, the chosen one. And then that wounding started to happen where we were no longer supporting each other as a sisterhood. We were all of a sudden enemies, fighting for our survival. And so, yeah, you should look it up. Sisterhood wound or sister wounds. It's a thing.
And that's exactly what it is. It resonates with me when you said fighting, competition. Yep. And that was what it felt to me. It's not as if people did something like really wrong, but I always felt this undercurrent of we cannot share. There's not enough, so we need to fight. We need to compete, whether it is for attention, whether it's for a space, whether it is competency, whether it's for love and respect. Like there's always like there's there's no space here. So it's rarely that like in a women's circle that actually do feel included or even heard, or even like there's space for everyone.
Yeah.
And of course, coming full circle, I had to like work on that to feel safe. I don't want to say in both worlds, but to recognize that this is not something that I can take or allow other people to provide for me, but more like what is it within myself that I feel undercurrent? How is it showing up for me, and work on that? Yeah.
Yeah, and really also taking a stand for each other. Like, I was at an event a few months ago and I went to lunch with some of the women, and two of them were just beating down one of the speakers and saying like, oh, it was so horrible. And she was just like spewing all her stuff on the stage and they were just beating her down, beating her down. And I had to gather all my courage within myself, which normally I'm not super good at in a group that I'm not the leader, because this was just like friends, like new friends that I was going to lunch with. And I was like, I have to say something. This is not okay. This is actually an event all about owning our too muchness as women. It was called the Too Much Woman event. And like, so I know. So I was like, I have to do this. I have to speak up. I have to. And like, I had that moment where I was like, all right, you might get ostracized. Like I might be ostracized from the table. Or what could happen is that even if I do get ostracized, worst case scenario, I feel still super good because I spoke up. You know, I spoke my truth. And so I did. I said, I tried to be really compassionate about it, but also pretty firm. I was like, I'm the first. So I took my part, right? I said, look, I'm the first to be critical of public speakers. I produced 3 TEDx women events. Like I've coached many speakers. I'm very critical. And this is not the place for that. This is not a public speaking conversation. That's what I said. And I said, it's really about loving each other and celebrating that a woman got on stage and she shared her truth. Like that does not happen every day. And like, she kind of had this moment where she was like, oh. And what was beautiful is that she also had a shift where she said, after a while she dropped in and was like, yeah, I guess I'm just really hard on myself as a speaker. Yeah. So I know, I was so proud of myself. I was like, all right, I can, I did it. I survived. Like, it's like those kind of things, right? That like we test out and we see what happens and it feels risky. And yet usually the reward internally is so great because we feel aligned with how we showed up, and then sometimes like things won't shift immediately when we speak up. We might get lots of pushback, but we never know what happens like years down the road, right? That person might think of that moment. So that's kind of what like I stay plugged into, is like the possibility of what could happen if we really bring that compassion and meeting people where they're at.
I love that you shared that story with us. It sounded vulnerable to me, but you see something that doesn't feel very right by you, and show up to talk about it, not from a sense of self-righteousness, like, you shouldn't do this, but more from a space of what is truly of service in this group, in alignment to the intention of this event that is being set up. And that's what it really is, high service.
We have this thing called calling people up versus calling people out.
Yeah. I love that reframe. I heard that on a podcast a while ago, and I was like, ooh, that is so good. I'm going to use that from now on. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So we only have a few more minutes, but I really want to use the last of our time. We could talk forever. I'm like, I have to have you both back. And when I'm in Seattle, we should totally meet up. So if you're in town, not traveling the world. So for our last few minutes, I would love to just hear your journey of how you went from being these amazing award-winning filmmakers, it sounds like, to where you've landed now, and really what has inspired that journey. And I just want to share with you that my partner is a videographer, and he specializes in filming transformational retreats. And so when I saw that was part of your layering of the depth of who you both are, I got so excited because I want to, hear even more about that. So if you wouldn't mind, does that feel good to kind of share the journey?
You can take it all the way to the States and I'll take over.
Yeah.
But that feels like a really long journey to share. So let me see what's most alive to share right now. I think my 12-year career as a documentary filmmaker taught me many things. It taught me just, storytelling structure. Like we can tell stories is what engages people. It also taught me a lot about myself, that I am very empathetic, like I'm able to connect with people. And in that 12 years, I finally burned out at the end of it because I didn't know what compassion is.
You didn't know what? I missed that. You didn't know what?
I didn't know what compassion is. Like it just accumulated over the years of me taking on the responsibility of wanting to help all these people that I was documenting and not having the ability to do so. Without learning what will be of true service is to really first take care of myself and know that by documenting their story, I'm already holding the space in witness for them to have their own understanding of their journey and perhaps even sharing experience a transformation for themselves. So I was in a space of wanting to fix and not having the tools or whatever to fix huge problems like politics, nature,
tsunamis.
like,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
not fix, right? Or don't even know where to start. And after that 12 years, when I'm really questioning how can something that I'm so passionate about burn me out so bad? So it'd be like as a woman standing up and I'm so empty inside.
Mm-hmm.
That was when I met you, isn't it? Yeah, you saw that part of me that was like a little, not a little, very lost in what I knew I was. Yeah, and then that started the journey of questioning and in self-inquiry of like, who am I? What am I here to do, really?
Mm.
And then when we got together, we met an elderly gentleman in Taiwan who truly inspired us because he lived his dream his entire life. And at that point, to me, that's a foreign concept. We were told that we would go get an education and then get a career, like at one of the top companies, be really successful going up the ranks, and then you will buy a car, and then you will buy a house, and then you will have a family, and then at some point you will have children, and then at some point you will have lots of money after you retire, and then maybe you will go live your life in a rocking chair or traveling around the world, whatever it is that you do your life after you retire. So
Yeah.
when we that this has been living his dream his entire life, it was as a to me. It's like, this is a thing. So why did nobody ever ask me what my dream is? Right? I was told that I can have a dream as long as it is, either a lawyer, an accountant, a teacher,
Engineer.
or a banker, or an engineer. It's like you can do anything you want as long as it's within this range,
Wow.
We found out that this elderly gentleman had one last dream that he wanted to pursue. His passion was in trains. He wanted to visit every single train station in Taiwan, which is where he lived. Now, this was when he was like 65. He wants to cycle along the train tracks, stop at every train station, take a photo in front of them as his life memento. And nobody was going to do that with him. So we kind of like volunteered ourselves. Actually, no, Val volunteered us to go journey with him. And at that point, she didn't even know how to cycle. So we took that. But when we made that promise to him, his eyes lit up as if he was that 3-year-old chasing after the trains one more time. And we knew that it was a promise we had to keep. So we came home and, I struggled with, what am I going to do in my career? What about my future? And then what about my past? And all those things that came up. Made a decision. We sold everything that we had. Learned to ride a bike. gathered some money through fundraising, which was like US $3,000, and lots of sponsorship materials like buys and panniers and clothes and everything. And then we set out on this 5-year journey around the world to ask as many people as possible one question: what is your dream? And documenting that with like our documentary skills. And you could imagine, you know, on that 5-year journey, every day is a challenge. Yeah. Every day, like we don't know where we're going to stay. We don't know who we're going to meet. Please continue.
Basically, in a flow of ambiguity and uncertainty, not knowing where we're going to land next, not knowing who we might meet next, not knowing if on days we might make it.
Wow.
Yeah. So 12 countries, hundreds of storytelling sessions, thousands of dreams collected later. We landed in LA, and that email incident happened. And that was what brought us all the way here to Seattle. Yeah.
Wait, what incident?
The email from the professor.
Oh, that. Oh.
So from that, we cannot get to the students here, in real life on stages. We're going to get to them via their screens. And so we started applying to give talks at TEDx's. And in that 2 weeks that we started applying, we received not one, but 2 invitations. One to hear TEDx Seattle Eastside Prep, and another one to TEDx Western Washington University at Bellingham. And that was how we got Pacific West.
Yeah. And I realized recently that all this mindfulness, meditation, spiritual tools that we are teaching right now, that we run a business of, that we actually learned all of them on the road. It was like every day for survival, we have to be very mindful, right? Every day we have to train our own instinct and to know like where we're going. Is meeting this person safe? And then showing up at different places to share our stories. It's like exercising our own leadership to be vulnerable, to share, and to all of that. Like we learned our spirituality in real life.
Yeah. Wow, talk about the ultimate like trust and surrender and survival, resourcefulness, right? Like experiment. Wow. That's amazing. So what, like 5 years, I have a couple of questions around that. And I'm like, 5 years, like I'm thinking of like my life the last 3 years, which is how long I've been here in Santa Cruz. And I'm like, oh my God, like that is a lot of years, even 3 years. But 5, so okay, so 1, like you only raised $3,000 US. Like how did you, just all like gifting? Is that really what you leaned into? Is like people took you in and like fed you and put you up and like you just lived based around community? Is that like?
There came a point, I think we were in Guatemala, one of the countries with the lowest GDPs in the world. And then we realized, touched that $3,000. Whenever the amount went down, a donation from out of the blue will always come in and replenish it. And when we were being hosted by host families, they literally passed us from home to home. At some point, it became like, oh, my uncle lives in the next town, my best friend lives in the next town over. And then also the schools we work with, sometimes the principals or the teachers would take us in, and then when we do public sharing sessions in like cafes or libraries, we would pass our helmet around, and so it just readily be generous with us.
Yeah, like we will be in a town where we don't have money to buy train tickets to go to the next one, right? Or like it's too far for us to cycle, or hop onto the bus, and then that one round of head passing or helmet passing will gather us enough exactly the amount to get the bus to the next one. So
Oh my gosh.
hindsight, very magical, right? Everything that we need always arrive at the right time, in the exact point that we needed them. And then it was also like when we were leaving it, it was constantly like, ah!
Yeah. So like, was there a moment where it just felt super, super hard and you almost gave up? And then how did you work through that?
When that email came.
Yeah. It wasn't because it was on the road and dirty and sweaty and tired or hungry. It wasn't any of that. It was that emotional rejection, right?
Yeah.
The sense of actually someone pointing out to you, you are different from us. And that layer of blanket that we've been building from the trip was just pulled out from underneath us, and we're like, wow, how did we get here?
It's like if you went through, say, 3 years of learning about yourself, you kind of sort of like have a little, or 3 years of tearing yourself apart, like going through all the layers and letting all these concepts of safety and whatever not that you have known to be unlearned. And then there came a point whereby the next level of growth that is needed, that completely needs you to be out of your edge, to just go, right? And that email came at that point in time where we were like, kind of like vulnerable, like either we make it or we just stay plateau right here. So on hindsight, blessing in disguise, but right there, it was really, somebody came and kind of told us you are fundamentally wrong. Or that was what I heard. You are fundamentally not, you're fundamentally wrong. Like all these things that you didn't do anything.
Because you look a certain way.
And that was like a really hard point for the both of us. It's like, what? I thought I knew something at this point, and then I'm like, oh, I don't know anything at all.
I also want to put in, for sure there was ego involved, right? We just came back up to the North America from Latin America, and on that journey, no matter which country we were in, we would always get picked up by their shamans, by their healers, by their medicine men and women, who would, to us at that point, felt really random, sit us down and say, you got to learn this thing. I'm going to impart everything I know to you. And we're like, we're filmmakers. We have no use.
Little did you know.
They're like, no, you need to learn this because the two of you are going to meet more people than all of us combined. And now this is a village in like Mumostanango, and then another village in Panahaja. Like they've never met each other before, but they will always speak in this collective. The two of you are going to meet more people than all of us combined. So you're going to learn this, and then you're going to go and teach this. And we're like, okay, sure, whatever you say. and we carry sort of these hopes, this thing that we inherited, this mission we inherited almost on our bikes, and we landed in the city of dreams thinking, okay, here is where we're going to make it. And somebody comes along and say, no, not this way and not yet.
And what year was that? Was that at the end? Was that year 5?
No, that was like straight in the middle of it.
Oh, okay.
13, not too long ago.
Yeah.
The peak.
Yeah.
So it's really either you make it or you.
Yeah.
Right. You're right there.
You fly or you, I don't know what.
Yeah.
Stay right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And so that person at the university was in LA. And then you're like, screw this, we're going to Seattle because we want to apply to TED Talks. And yeah.
We received, and then we came up.
You did what?
So after the rejection, we applied, not knowing where we might land. We were even thinking that we're going to leave the States. Like, this isn't the country for us to do this work in, right?
Wow.
The American dream locked down. We should just move on.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay, so then how many years has it been since your 5-year journey?
I think we said 5 years because we left in 2010, and only in about 2015 we made the conscious decision that we're gonna stop using the bicycles.
Okay.
Those 2 wheels can only bring you so far in a day. And we
Yeah.
decided on a different form of the same message. We started doing a lot more speaking in terms of working in companies, in schools, in governments, at a city level. So we went away from the format of letting synchronicity lead us. We decided that we're going to be intentional, because this is no longer about one to many, or two to many. In this case, this is about two to the masses. And how can we do that so that we can scale our influence for good? Yeah.
So in a way, full circle, we went back to mass media.
Yeah. Right where we came from.
Yeah. So are you still producing documentaries?
Not only if we see something that we feel really called to do. And right now, the storytelling skills is really, it steeps into everything that we create, and every program that we do. There's always like an arc, right? There's always a way of integrating how human beings connect with stories, and how our brain thinks in a way of, from layers to layers, and helping them come to an understanding at the end of it, for knowledge then to become wisdom.
Yeah, and it's also informed how we work with our private clients, right? Helping them see the story that they have been on autopilot for a really long time, and then how can they then like course align, not so much correct, but course align the next chapter according to what is true and alive and meaningful for them.
Ooh, I love that. Both the storytelling as a society, and really what makes us tick and come together, and then the stories we tell ourselves. I'm gonna have to have you guys back on the show just to talk about that. I'm like, oh, that could be like a whole episode. What'd you say, Tay?
We should.
Yeah, right? Oh, so important. Oh my gosh. I love you guys so much. This is such a beautiful conversation, and just your journey and your work. And I just feel your hearts so much, which is really, really important to me when connecting with people. And so I'm just so grateful to have had this connection time with both of you. And I just know that people who have heard this episode are going to take away so many beautiful nuggets of inspiration. And yeah, so why don't we wrap up by, if there's anything you feel called to share that you haven't shared yet, or even if you want to tell us what you're feeling most inspired around next, like in your next level of your journey, whatever you want to end with.
Yeah, that's it. What a life sit.
We would love to do a closing sit.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Just integrate everything that has been shared, and also to give blessings to the people who are listening into the conversation. Like you might feel like right now it's like, and then it's time to just settle for a bit, right? And trusting whatever that needs to be heard has been heard, whatever that needs to be said has been said. And just allowing ourselves to land however it is that landing means to you right now.
Checking in with your headspace, just getting a sense of what sort of thoughts are running through or passing by. Checking in with your gut, sensing what feelings or emotions are bubbling up from within you in this moment. And then checking in with your heart, asking yourself, what is most important right now? Just taking a deeper breath, inhaling, and then exhale, arriving back. Opening your eyes if they're closed. Smiling. May you be well.
And may all your dreams come true.
Yes, I like that. May you be well and may all your dreams come true. Beautiful. Thank you both so much for sharing this time with me and with everyone watching and listening. Where is your preferred way for people to connect with you?
Please find us on LinkedIn. That's where we like to hang out. And I'm not sure, do you usually also add like our website and stuff in there? Yeah. So if you learn anything or you're curious to learn more about something that we shared, please reach out. Don't be shy. Come say hi.
Good job.
I love that. So find them on LinkedIn, on their website, and their website is just tayval.com, correct? Yes. And all of the links, any kind of resources that you might want to partake in from Tay and Val, I will include over on the show page notes. And this is episode number 26. So it'll be at jessicatomlinson.com/show-26. All right, guys, thank you.